A little girl stood up in the courtroom and said, "I'm my mother's lawyer." It was Letitia, just 7 years old. What she did that day changed the course of the entire trial. The courtroom was so silent, it felt almost tangible, when Letitia, just 7 years old, raised her hand and asked to speak. At first, everyone thought she only wanted to comfort her mother, but what followed shattered any naive assumptions. With a steady voice and determined eyes, she said, "I am my mother's lawyer." A murmur ran through the room, but no one dared interrupt. It was as if, in that moment, time itself had paused, not out of pity, but out of respect. The judge, a man used to cold, well-rehearsed arguments, tried to hide the smile threatening to appear. "Is this a joke?" he asked, almost automatically, trying to maintain composure. But the moment he looked back into Letitia's eyes and saw that glimmer, one that only shines when someone speaks from the heart, he knew it was no joke. What he saw was courage, pain, and a sense of justice that doesn't always arise in adults but sometimes overflows from a child. Letitia didn't know legal jargon, but she knew exactly what she was doing. She knew the truth, felt her mother's pain, and possessed something many lawyers lose over time: the purity of intention. As she spoke, her words were simple, yet carried profound meaning. "My mom doesn't hurt anyone. She just wants to stay with me." And it was impossible not to be moved. But what stunned the courtroom even more was yet to come. When everyone thought the girl had already gone too far, Letitia took it further. Without hesitation, she began citing, almost unbelievably, entire articles from the Civil Code. Article 28 says a child has the right to be heard in cases that affect their family life, she stated, her voice clear and unwavering. The courtroom, which had been responding with emotion, now responded with awe. It was as if a young legal prodigy had stood up to defend what truly mattered. The lawyers present, many with years of experience and diplomas on the wall, exchanged silent glances. This wasn't just a child making an emotional plea. It was someone who knew exactly what she was saying. And more, she knew why she was saying it. When she quoted Article 227 of the Constitution about the state and society's duty to ensure a child's right to family life, no one dared to correct her. Because, frankly, no one there could have explained it better. The general feeling was disbelief. How could someone so young understand terms like the best interest of the child, or emotional bonding rights, with such ease? The judge, who had tried to maintain protocol, leaned slightly forward, as if not to miss a single syllable. The little lawyer wasn't just earning respect, she was disarming technical arrogance. But her strength went far beyond theory. Letitia's resolve wasn't just rhetorical, she came prepared. With small, but firm hands, she pulled a phone from her pink backpack. "I want to show you something," she said. When she pressed play, her father's voice echoed through the courtroom. "As soon as I get custody, that inheritance will be mine." The room fell into a chilling silence. There was no room left for doubt or pretense. It was a scheme, and she exposed it, without hesitation. In the recording, the father was on the phone, laughing, saying things like, "A child is just a detail," and "2 million doesn't fall from the sky." It sounded like a soap opera villain, only this one was real, alive, sitting right there. The prosecutor rearranged his papers, stunned. Lawyers whispered, trying to figure out how this little girl had obtained something so strategic. Letitia looked at the judge and, with the calmness of someone who had seen too much, said, "He never wanted to be my dad. He just wanted the money." Outrage filled the room. A man in the back shook his head in disbelief. The judge had to call for silence 3 times as shock spread through the courtroom. The father, pale, tried to justify himself, but no one was willing to listen. Letitia didn't cry, she just wanted justice. And as absurd as it seemed, that 7-year-old was commanding the courtroom like she had been born for it. But there was something even more unsettling to come. As if the recording wasn't enough, Letitia opened a transparent folder filled with documents, each carefully placed, like a treasure. "This proves who's really been there for me," she said, handing the judge a sequence of school reports, all with good grades and teacher notes praising her discipline. There were also signed statements from child psychologists and school coordinators describing her mother as loving, present, and actively involved. Nothing was random. Everything was dated, organized, and credible. What impressed most was how methodical and clear it all was, as if she had been trained by a legal expert, but no one had done that. Her mother, still in shock, could barely understand where such articulation came from. Letitia spoke about the documents naturally, as if she understood their value better than any adult in the room. Showing receipts for medical appointments and extracurricular activities, she made it clear, "She took care of me this whole time. Not him." It wasn't just logic, it was raw truth, revealed sheet by sheet. The defense attorneys tried to interrupt, calling it emotional manipulation. But the judge silenced them with a gesture. That girl was simply doing what many adults forget, presenting the truth with evidence, not speeches. Letitia's authenticity wasn't just in what she said, but in what she showed. And when she looked the judge in the eye and said, "I brought everything because I knew no one would believe me with just words," the courtroom went breathless. And it was only the beginning. After presenting the documents, the judge called the witnesses, and what followed moved even the most skeptical hearts. Ms. Helena, her teacher, eyes filled with tears, said Letitia was one of the most caring and responsible children in school. "She shows up clean, fed, homework done, and with a smile. Always speaks of her mother with pride." Helena emphasized she had never seen signs of neglect. On the contrary, she saw a devoted mother who never missed a meeting. Next came an elderly woman with slow steps but a firm voice, Mrs. Carmen, their neighbor for over 10 years. With just a few words, she dispelled any lingering doubt. "I watched that girl grow up. I saw the mother caring for her while juggling 3 jobs. And the father, only showing up when the money hit the account." Her words weren't filled with anger, but with a truth that only those who witness the everyday can speak. It was justice being restored through ordinary scenes of life. Other testimonies followed, simple but striking. School friends recalled how Letitia always had a snack, neatly ironed uniform, and brought toys to share with kids who didn't have any. A guidance counselor remembered Letitia once saying in a group talk, "My mom doesn't have much time, but she gives me more than enough love." Each testimony was a puzzle piece confirming the obvious. That woman was a mother, a nurturer, a safe harbor. But behind all that truth, there was still something left to be revealed. The most intense moment came when Letitia asked permission to question her father directly. The judge hesitated, but given her maturity, he agreed. She turned to him, her feet dangling from the chair, and asked, "What's my teacher's name?" Silence. "What's my favorite ice cream flavor?" More silence. This wasn't an interrogation, it was a mirror. A painful portrait of a bond that never existed. Letitia didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice was cold, direct. "You never came to my birthdays. You never knew I sleep with the light on because I'm afraid of the dark. But now you want to be my dad because there's money involved." Her father forced a smile, but the shame was evident. No legal argument could mask that emotional emptiness. The court no longer heard a child, it heard a searing, blood-stamped truth. And then she closed with a sentence that made the judge lower his head for a moment. "I don't want a father who sees me as a check. I want a father who sees me as a daughter." It was the kind of statement that doesn't fit in legal transcripts, but weighs 1,000 times more than any legal clause. She wasn't asking for custody, she was asking for dignity. And even after everything, what Letitia revealed next left everyone speechless. With the calm certainty of someone speaking a painful truth, Letitia revealed an episode that shook everyone in the courtroom. She shared how, even when she was ill, her father would hang up the phone and ignore her calls. "I would call him crying, running a fever, just wanting to hear his voice. but he never answered. The image of that lonely, sick child on the other end of a silent phone line sent a knot through the throat of everyone listening. Her father's absence was not merely physical, but a deliberate and cruel rejection. Ricardo, the father, felt the impact instantly. His face, once so controlled, drained of color, and his hand trembled slightly. Embarrassment was visible, despite his effort to remain composed. In that moment, there were no lawyers, no legal strategies, only the raw truth Letitia delivered with courage and maturity. The courtroom, a silent witness, seemed to hold its breath. This was no longer a legal case. It had become human drama in its purest form. The public revelation of paternal indifference marked a turning point in the hearing. The judge exchanged glances with the prosecutors, who already began preparing the next steps. But Letitia, despite the heavy silence, remained steadfast, fully aware of the power of her voice. She was no longer a frightened child. She had become the protagonist of her own story, ready to turn the page and prove that real love cannot be measured in titles or wealth. And the next chapter of this journey would reveal even more. When Letitia opened her diary, the entire room fell silent, as if even the walls were listening. With a quiet but steady voice, she read passages about forgotten birthdays, promises that were never kept, and an absence that hurt more than words could express. On my last birthday, he didn't come. He said he would call, but he never did. I stayed alone with my mother, but I missed him. Those simple words, filled with innocence, broke hearts in that room. With every page she read, faces in the audience transformed. Adults accustomed to rehearsed, formal speeches could not hold back tears. The purity of a child's unguarded account laid bare the weight of abandonment. Those small words had enormous impact, turning a legal proceeding into a deeply human moment. The judge lowered his head, moved by emotion, as the silence became almost tangible. Reading from the diary was not merely reliving a sad memory, it was a call to see what is often invisible, the real suffering of a child who only wants to be loved and remembered. The court no longer perceived a legal conflict, but a life story that needed to be heard with an open heart. And it was within that emotionally charged silence that the next chapter of this journey began to take shape. Letitia presented the court with a series of messages her mother had sent to her father over the years. In them she shared important details, reminding him of medical appointments, school grades, even small milestones like school performances or birthdays. They were heartfelt attempts to keep him informed and connected, demonstrating that the desire for engagement came from a place of care and hope. Yet his responses were cold, almost mechanical. A bare "okay" or "cool" appeared amid long stretches of silence. In many cases, he didn't respond at all, leaving messages unanswered for days, weeks, or months. It was as though those messages that carried love and responsibility were invisible to him. The court saw a clear pattern, a disinterest that went beyond physical absence and reached into the absence of any genuine emotional bond. Those real, straightforward records dismantled once again the narrative the father tried to impose. This wasn't a relationship worn down by time, it was an absence that had never been filled. Letitia and her mother were there not just to prove facts, but to reveal the human truth hidden behind numbers and documents. And that truth was beginning to turn the tide in that court. But one last chapter remained to be revealed. Holding her cell phone firmly, Letitia played a recording once more, a call that changed everything in the hearing. Her father's voice, clear and cold, revealed his true motive. He only wanted custody of his daughter to gain control of the $2 million she would inherit when she turned 18. "It's all a matter of money," he said, almost indifferent to the human consequences. The courtroom fell silent, stunned by the calculated coldness of that plan. Hearing this, Letitia finally understood what was happening. She was not seen as a daughter, but as a valuable object, a central piece in a financial battle. The revelation pained not only her heart, but everyone present who followed her story. This cruel realization elevated the legal fight into something far greater, a struggle for the right to be loved for who she truly was, a child, not a sum of money. As the recording ended, Letitia looked at the judge with a mixture of sadness and resolve. She knew her story was being heard, not just by the laws, but by true justice. The disclosure of her father's cold, calculated financial interest became the turning point of the case, making clear that love and family cannot be replaced by monetary value. Yet one final gesture remained from the girl to close this chapter. During her testimony, Letitia revealed one of the deepest wounds she carried, the hateful words her father had said about her mother. He called her ignorant, and even said she can't even read properly. These insults were not merely verbal attacks, they were attempts to diminish the person who had been Letitia's emotional safe haven, a woman who, despite everything, fought with dignity. Hearing that from someone who should have been a partner only fueled Letitia's anger. But that anger wasn't destructive, it became fuel for protection. "I will not let him hurt my mother," Letitia said with a firmness that surprised everyone in the courtroom. It was the voice of a child who, even at 7, grasped the power of justice and love. Her decision to protect her mother at all costs became her shield and her mission. She knew that, however unfair the world could be, inside that courtroom the truth could prevail. Her courage echoed beyond the walls of the court. Her outrage was a summons for others to hear not just what she said, but what she represented, a force strong enough to face disdain and lies to defend the one she loved most. This battle wasn't merely legal, it was deeply human. And Letitia was ready to fight until the end. Still, what she would do next would surprise them all. A week before the hearing, Letitia called her teacher and told her everything, showed photos, missed calls, and the recordings. When teacher Helena heard the recording that exposed the father's real motive, something inside her stirred, a profound sense of responsibility. A former law student, she realized she could offer more than comforting words. She decided to teach Letitia everything she knew about family law, a critical knowledge they would need to face the court with clarity and assurance. It was the beginning of a strategic turning point. Helena understood that legal knowledge is power, and without it, Letitia risked being overwhelmed by seasoned attorneys using the system to their advantage. With patience and dedication, she began explaining the key rights and obligations guaranteed by law to mother and daughter. She showed how each legal article could help build a robust defense, one grounded not just in emotion, but in facts and legislation. It was an education that transformed fear into action. Together they devised a plan for Letitia to become the true representative of her family in court. Not a passive figure, but someone who understood every step and argument, and knew exactly when and how to present evidence. Helena taught not only legal theory, but instilled confidence, the kind that grows from proper preparation. As the hearing was rescheduled, the two women grew stronger, ready for the next chapter of their struggle. A silent but powerful pact was born. Mother, daughter, and teacher united with a single purpose: to study, to fight, and to protect what truly mattered. Letitia and Helena sealed their pact not with empty promises, but with determined eyes and hands clasped over the kitchen table. Each would carry an essential role. Helena would teach, and Letitia would shine. A new chapter began, where their humble home became both classroom and strategy room. Training was intense. Stacks of family law books, scribbled notes in makeshift notebooks, sleepless nights grappling with legal terms even adults found hard to understand. Letitia studied with effort and bravery, determined to be heard by the judge as both woman and mother. Helena, with her experience and sensitivity, navigated the shortcuts and pitfalls. It was more than study, it was forging a legal armor made of wisdom and pain turned into courage. At just 7 years old, Letitia astonished everyone. Her memory was remarkable. Her ability to understand entire articles and recite them confidently delighted the teacher. More than that, she truly comprehended what she read. Each concept, parental responsibility, paternal negligence, documentary evidence, became ammunition in her brilliant young mind. She was no longer just the hurt child. She had become a conscious defender, ready to confront not only her father, but a system that often silences the most innocent voices. Dolls gave way to the civil code. Instead of playing house, Letitia highlighted articles about custody, parental authority, and children's rights. 3 weeks of total dedication, mornings with Helena, afternoons studying with her mother, nights reviewing on her own. Her room transformed into a library and makeshift classroom. Nothing was the same. There was urgency, a mission. Helena led the studies with firmness and kindness. She explained what the law said, illustrated with real-life examples, and encouraged Letitia to ask countless questions. The girl wanted to understand every detail. Who decides custody? What does the child's best interest really mean? How much weight does a minor's word hold in front of a judge? It wasn't just legal content, it was a survival map. Although challenged, Letitia progressed. She learned to distinguish emotional arguments from legally valid ones. She began using terms that once seemed distant: parental responsibility, paternal dereliction, documentary proof. She wrote everything down and explained it patiently to her mother as if she were an adult. A new bond emerged, stronger, more mature, more invincible. Letitia lifted her eyes from the book and declared, "The law exists to protect those who have no voice." That phrase, spoken by a 7-year-old, silenced even teacher Helena. Amid complex codes and daunting terms, Letitia grasped something many adults still do not. Justice is not vengeance, it's protection. And protection begins when truth is given space to breathe. She did not seek to harm her father, she only wanted to be heard. Armed with legal knowledge, Letitia felt she was no longer alone. She was no longer a child among powerful adults. She was someone empowered by truth and clarity of facts. Justice, she realized, isn't about who shouts the loudest, it's about who has the courage to reveal what they have lived. And in doing so, she stopped being a victim and became a symbol of resistance. Even giants tremble before a child wielding truth. What Letitia sought wasn't punishment, it was dignity. She fought for the right to love her mother in peace, to grow without fear, to not be treated as a pawn in a money game. Every paragraph of the Civil Code she memorized was like an invisible shield around her small yet powerful being. And the greatest lesson she left that court with was simple, yet unforgettable. When you fight with love and truth, even a child can transform the world. The kitchen table became her podium, the chairs became benches for judge and witnesses. There, among humble walls and determined eyes, Letitia prepared for something far greater than any school assignment, confronting her own father before a judge. Teacher Helena assumed the role of magistrate, her mother played the prosecutor. Letitia practiced her posture, her breathing, her arguments. It was more than a dress rehearsal, it was training for the most important moment of her life. Each simulation ignited a little more courage within her. In the first days, Letitia trembled, made mistakes, forgot. But with every repetition, something shifted. Her words came firmer, her eyes no longer fled, and her voice stopped shaking. She learned to breathe deeply before responding, to face silence without fear, and to hold on to truth even when it hurt. These rehearsals weren't just about what to say, they were about who she was becoming, a child who learned to speak, and to be heard. In that house where she once played with dolls, she was now practicing defending her mother with arguments grounded in law. Nervousness gave way to confidence born of daily effort. That humble home housed something grand, a child being ready to challenge lies with dignity. And with each mock hearing, Letitia proved to herself that she was ready for the real world. She didn't want to beat her father, she wanted to defend the love they both had ignored. Helena knew that beyond legal arguments, Letitia needed emotional armor. They will try to provoke you, to make you cry, to make you seem fragile. But you are not, she said, looking the girl in the eyes. During practice, they simulated insults, scornful looks, sarcastic remarks, everything Letitia might face in court. It was hard and sometimes painful, but it was part of the battle. Because justice also requires preparation for pain. Helena explained that when an opponent attacks your person, it's because they have lost control of the argument. When reasoning fails, they go for emotions. And that's where you win, by staying calm. Letitia learned to not react instantly, to count silently to 3, to respond with clarity, without returning blow for blow. She was a child, yes, but already capable of discerning attack from defense. Every provocation became, in fact, a confession of the other's weakness. In that home, Letitia trained not just to speak, but to resist. She understood that the courtroom wasn't a battlefield, but a place of truth. And truth doesn't shout, doesn't attack, doesn't humiliate. Hold your head high, even when you feel like bowing, Helena repeated. Because sometimes the greatest act of courage is not to respond to aggression, but to keep standing for what's right with dignity. The night before the hearing, tension hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Letitia stared at the papers, but her mind was far away. That's when Helena sat beside her and said, in a firm yet gentle voice, "Truth doesn't guarantee victory, but it guarantees peace. And whoever fights with truth, even if they lose, never truly loses." Letitia took a deep breath. For the first time, she understood that her fight wasn't against her father, it was for justice. Helena went on, "You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. Judges see more than words, they feel the heart behind them." Letitia squeezed her aunt's hand and nodded. That conversation wasn't about winning or losing anymore, it was about having the courage to speak what had been locked inside for years. And in that moment, she realized the courtroom wouldn't be a battlefield of fear. It would be the stage of her liberation. Her mother added softly, "If justice is done, it'll be because you had the courage to be who you are. And if it isn't, your voice will still have echoed." Letitia smiled, tears in her eyes. She was no longer fighting like a scared little girl. She was standing tall with the most powerful weapon there is, the truth. And while the outcome remained uncertain, one thing was crystal clear: she was on the right side. The sun had yet to rise when Letitia woke up. In the kitchen, the smell of coffee mixed with the reverent silence of the early morning. Cecilia prepared her daughter's breakfast with trembling hands but resolute eyes. Before leaving, they held hands and said a short but powerful prayer. "Lord, may the truth speak louder than any lie today," whispered her mother, eyes glistening. In the car, the only sound was the rhythm of their hearts. Helena, in the back seat, held the civil code like a sword. Letitia, still wearing her school uniform under her coat, gripped her diary tightly, as if it could protect her. Cecilia turned and said, "Be strong, my love. But above all, be you." Letitia responded with a serene look, the look of someone who would no longer run. As they entered the courthouse, curious eyes followed them. A child with a backpack, a resolute mother, and a teacher with the soul of a lawyer. But they weren't just characters in an unusual case. They were the living embodiment of something greater, the belief that justice can prevail even when the odds feel unfair. And that day, Letitia wasn't just going to speak, she was going to set her story free. The courtroom was packed, yet silent, as Letitia stood. With small but steady steps, she walked to the front, where the judge watched her with curiosity and respect. After hearing her entire story, the judge removed his glasses, cleaned them, and put them back on. He cleared his throat, but his firm voice made it clear, something important was coming. He looked at Cecilia, then at Letitia, and finally at the father, with a grave expression. "This court recognizes not only the dedication of this mother, but the extraordinary courage of this daughter. What we witnessed here today was more than a hearing, it was a human cry for justice." The room held its breath as he continued with the verdict. Full custody was granted to Cecilia. The judge emphasized the father's emotional abandonment and the clear lack of emotional bond evident in the evidence presented. "This court strongly condemns the manipulation of a child's emotions for financial gain," he declared. His words rang out like a collective sigh, washing away years of silence and injustice. Cecilia embraced Letitia tightly, like someone who could finally breathe freely. Outside the courthouse, the press waited, but Cecilia simply took her daughter's hand and smiled. It wasn't the smile of someone who had defeated an opponent, it was the smile of someone who had finally triumphed together. Letitia looked at Helena and whispered, "Truth won, didn't it, Aunt?" And for the first time in a long while, they all silently agreed. Justice had a face, and that day, it was the face of a girl who dared to fight with love. The very next day, footage from the hearing spread across every news outlet. Clips of Letitia standing up for her mother and the judge praising her bravery went viral. People from all over the country shared emotional reactions to the girl who had become her mother's lawyer. TV shows began calling, inviting Cecilia and Letitia to interviews, wanting to understand how such a powerful story was born in such a humble home. During a live interview, Letitia spoke with surprising maturity. "I only studied to protect my mom. But now I want other kids to know they have rights too." The honesty in her eyes touched the entire nation. Children started writing letters, saying they wanted to learn about justice. Suddenly, Letitia had become a symbol of courage, not because of fame, but because of the purpose burning in her heart. To Cecilia, her daughter wasn't a media hero, she was the girl who saved her dignity. Helena, by their side, received messages from educators and lawyers offering support. Something bigger had begun. That family's fight had become a source of hope for thousands. What had once been born of pain now bloomed as a national inspiration. Years passed, but Letitia's name still echoed in courtrooms and classrooms across the country. Now a teenager, she was invited to speak before the National Congress. Standing before lawmakers, she delivered a powerful speech about the importance of teaching children about their rights from a young age. Her proposal, the creation of the Children's Legal Education Act. The chamber fell silent, hanging onto her every word. "What saved me was knowledge. Every child deserves that chance," she said, eyes shining with conviction. Her speech received a standing ovation, not as a political formality, but as a recognition of an undeniable truth. That very day, the bill went to vote, and to everyone's surprise, it passed unanimously. A new era had begun for American childhood. Emotional, Letitia left the Capitol with a deep sense of purpose. Helena was waiting outside, eyes filled with tears, and Cecilia embraced her like she was hugging an entire country. The girl who was once treated like a valuable object was now changing the lives of thousands. What began as a defense of her mother had become a quiet revolution, with books, words, and justice as her weapons. Harvard's grand auditorium fell into absolute silence as the name was announced, Letitia Johnson. She walked across the stage with firm steps, wearing her gown with the same courage she once wore a toy tie in court. She was now officially a lawyer, graduating from the world's most prestigious university as valedictorian. But that moment wasn't hers alone. It belonged to her mother, to Helena, and to every child forgotten by the system. In her graduation speech, Letitia surprised everyone by announcing the creation of the Letitia Johnson Institute, a bold initiative dedicated to offering free legal support to vulnerable children, victims of abandonment, abuse, or manipulation. "It's not enough to win for myself. I want to open doors for those who still can't speak up." The crowd applauded with emotion, some jurists visibly moved to tears. The girl who once defended her mother was now a voice for thousands. In the months that followed, the institute became an international benchmark. Reports, awards, and invitations poured in, but Letitia remained focused, training empathetic lawyers, building teams of specialized psychologists, and expanding outreach. Children who once lived in silence were now heard. And the girl whose father once said her mother couldn't even read had become a global symbol of justice, resilience, and social transformation. At 28, Letitia Johnson graced the cover of Time magazine under the headline, "The Young Woman Who Changed the Future of Children Worldwide." She received the Person of the Year award, becoming the youngest ever to earn that honor. Her image, holding a copy of the Constitution beside a child helped by the Institute, spread across the world. It was no longer just a moving story, it was a quiet revolution, powered by compassion, justice, and concrete action. The Letitia Johnson Institute now had a presence in 12 countries, including war zones and forgotten rural areas. Lawyers and educators united under one motto: no child without a voice. Every center carried the spirit of that first battle, fought in court in the name of maternal love. Hundreds of thousands of children had been protected, heard, reintegrated, and empowered. Letitia was no longer just a lawyer. She was a global symbol of hope. In speeches at the UN, meetings with heads of state, and emotional interviews, Letitia always carried the same humility. She never placed herself above the causes she defended. My father taught me how abandonment wounds. My mother taught me how love heals. And I chose to live between those two truths. Her legacy crossed borders, becoming a global call to protect the innocent, and to remind the world that even the smallest voice can change laws, lives, and futures. At a packed international conference, Letitia took the stage with misty eyes. Before leaders, journalists, and children from around the world, she said, "Every child has a voice. Sometimes it's quiet, shy, confused, but it exists. And our duty is to hear it, protect it, and turn it into strength." The room fell silent, each word landing like a prayer. She reminded everyone that her fight was never about revenge or vanity, but about justice and love. What moved me wasn't hatred for abandonment, it was love for my mother. A love that taught me the law exists to protect the weak, not to shield the powerful. Her words were simple, but they struck deep, like only those who've known pain and still choose good can do. It was the end of a cycle, and the beginning of a movement. Letitia left the stage with a sentence that would echo for generations. True love doesn't need to shout to be heard. It acts, it transforms, and it prevails. In the audience, children held small books, the Constitution rewritten in child-friendly language, the living symbol that her mission was complete. She was no longer a little girl facing a judge. She was the woman who made the world listen to the voice of a child.